The views and opinions expressed are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of KTOO Public Media. This program may contain discussions that include terminology or perspectives that reflect different time periods, cultural contexts, or viewpoints that may not align with contemporary standards or expectations.
I like to see progress, but I don't like to see it come in Elfin Cove. I don't like to see it spoiled by other people coming in.
I guess a person has to create their own adventure. Although now it's just the kind that I knew, a little harder to find.
We are liberated. We can put on a beautiful flashy costume and we can interpret this sensual music to our heart's content, and people can just watch.
Welcome again to Rain Country, the weekly television journal of the people, places, and activities of Southeast Alaska. Greetings, I'm Scott Foster. Anyone who has traveled in Southeast probably has their own favorite location. If a vote were held, my guess is the title Most Scenic would go to a small fishing village. In the summer, its harbors are filled with fishing boats, many of them just passing through while others call the cove home for the summer. The population is not determined, but there are 60 to 70 registered voters. In the winter, the population drops down to a dozen diehards. It's located on the northern tip of Chichagof Island at the end of a series of coves sheltered from the wind and the waves of the North Pacific.
Elfin Cove has no roads into it. Boardwalks replace streets. There's no ferry service. In fact, the only public transportation to and from the cove are the mail planes that land there on floats. Most of the people that live in a place like Elfin Cove live there for one of two reasons, if not both: to be close to the fishing grounds or to get away from governmental and other influences of the bigger cities.
I grew up in Juneau, and I lived there for quite a few years. I went to grade school there and high school and a few years after that, and I finally found that I didn't know anybody there, even though I had a lot of friends, but it had changed so much since I had been there, that, and the value system had changed so much, and you know, it was, people were getting ripped off, and crime was happening, and people were getting raped, and those kind of things never happened when I was growing up there. And one day I just turned around and said, I don't want to live here anymore. It's gotten too bad for me, and that's when I decided to look for another place to live. And Juneau's a mini, ugly, big city. And I don't care to be there more than a brief period.
But even a tiny place like Elfin Cove changes. The most noticeable change in recent years is the influx of the sport charter businesses. Like communities everywhere, the introduction of something new often causes frictions.
We have commercial fishing drags that are certain areas that commercial boats fish, and there are certain rules that you run those drags by, just from historical precedents, and usually for good reasons. And these guys come up here and they run them the wrong way, and they get in your way, and they cause nothing but hassles, and I think they should be more respectful of the historical ways that have been established.
Resentment of a new element in a community is often sparked by a general dislike of progress and growth.
I like to see progress, but I don't like to see it come in Elfin Cove. I don't like to see it spoiled by other people coming in. I don't like to see too much stuff go on, like telephones coming in here. I don't like that.
When I visited the Cove, the only telephone in town was a community phone, but an area-wide phone system was just being installed.
I like the idea. I think it's a good idea. You don't have to run downtown through this deep snow to answer a telephone in the wintertime.
We're going to get a telephone. God forbid, but I don't see why not. You got to make calls occasionally, and whether you got to go downtown and use a public telephone and wait in line and all this other hassle, or just simply pick it up off your wall, it doesn't make much difference. You know, you're plugged into the telephone circuit. When you need spare parts, you got to call. You can't write letters. You're going to lose 2 weeks if you write a letter. So yeah, we're going to get a telephone.
Ironically, Roy Clements, who didn't want telephones, is the first in town to have TV. Roy, a 35-year resident of the Cove, installed his own satellite dish.
In my time, I never had to watch TV. I never got to see shows or anything because I lived out here and I lived in the sticks. I lived in the Taku River where we had nothing. And I lived there until 1939. So I didn't get to see too much. And then just the last few years, I got the chance to see TV.
Roy installed his dish only after an opportunity for the Cove to receive state-funded television was rejected through a vote at a town meeting.
With community television, you go to visit someone at their house, they're watching TV. Where now, you go to visit someone at their house, you sit down and talk to them, there's no television going. And it really affects the lifestyle of the people.
The community meeting that controlled the fate of television in the Cove is one of 2 forums that make up its municipal government. The other is the meetings of the Elfin Cove Nonprofit Corporation. There is no mayor and no city council. Whoever shows up at the meetings gets to discuss and vote on the issues and events that affect their lives.
Ferries, hydro, school building, community building, sewerage, all of the things that involve a community. Now there's a lot of concern about float houses. And what are we going to do about the boat harbor and keeping the things clean?
The Cove's nonprofit corporation was created to receive and distribute state oil revenue sharing money. 85% of that money has gone towards exploring the feasibility of hydropower for the town, and the rest has been dedicated to the maintenance of existing facilities such as docks and boardwalks. Greg Howe, elected chairman of the board, lives on an island a number of miles from the Cove.
I think probably the reason I was elected as the chairman is because of that, because I live away from the community and I don't get involved in the little things that always seem to happen in small communities, cabin fever type things, you know, where people get nitpicky with each other over things that are really of no concern. And because I don't live there and I don't get involved in those things, I get along well with everybody. My position as the chairman of the corporation is merely as somebody to direct the meetings, and hopefully everybody will contribute just as much as the next person, you know, and that all the decisions we make will be, you know, at least the majority of the people.
One of the major improvements the corporation members are presently dealing with is a legislatively funded community center. The old Swanson's Elfin Cove store and the property it sits on has been purchased, and when plans are finalized, the store will be torn down to make way for the new building.
There's a lot of people that felt it was you know, why should we get this much money to build this huge expensive building, you know. But on the other hand, you know, there's no place for our kids to go play inside or anything in the wintertime, and there's no place for the community to get together, and I think it's an important thing to have. We now have a community building, and with the library and medical supplies, it's full. You know, if you have a community meeting and everybody shows up, there's no room. And we have no school right now, and as things stand, there's not enough children for the state to supply a school and a teacher. But if we have a community building that the school system can lease a room from, they may give us a teacher.
There are other things that will have to be faced in the coming years. The state ferries will bring an influx of transients, a sewage system will have to be installed, garbage will become a concern, they may even begin building roads. And then there are the inevitable property taxes.
I believe in that when a person builds his home and tears out the stumps and everything, it's his home, he should keep it. That's his home. There shouldn't be any taxes put on our homes. I don't know, that's my belief. We pay enough taxes in our life without having to pay taxes on our home.
Just like taxes, change is inevitable. The people of the Cove, like all the people of Southeast, have to take it as it comes. But through personal involvement in their community meetings, they hope to shape the future to fit their lifestyles. As they work to do so, they can breathe a little easier knowing that, for now at least, time is on their side.
It's true that Elfin Cove is getting more and more of the amenities of civilization, but it's coming very slowly. And even though we have 3 fishing lodges for sports fishermen that are replacing the commercial fishermen, it isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It's happening very slowly. And I think we're going to be able to preserve our way of life quite a bit longer here at Elfin Cove than what's happening in the major communities of Southeast.
I had a great yen for the sea, being of Norwegian ancestry. And went to sea at 15. And I went to Seattle and walked up and down the waterfront. In those days, there were no unions and no Coast Guard regulations. And a boy could walk up the gangway of a boat and see the captain, get a job. And the whole world was open. You could sail to Bombay and South Africa, South America. They were like magic carpets.
And so began the adventurous life of Amos Burg. He began as a bellboy on a small passenger vessel serving West Coast ports. Within 2 years, he'd earned the rank of able seaman and had sailed to Hawaii, Australia, Samoa, and around the world.
I like going to sea, you know, but I didn't see any future because I wanted to change ships to go someplace else. There would be voids. And if you're going to rise in the ranks, you have to stay on one ship. And I didn't like this commuting. And Fred and I decided to, well, I decided to buy a ship of my own, and I bought a 18-foot Old Town canoe. We shipped it to Skagway, Alaska, and started paddling for Seattle.
Amos Burg's canoeing adventures had just begun. He made several historic river trips. One of his more thrilling was down the Snake. Amos began the trip with a slightly mad character who bailed out after they lost 2 canoes. Amos returned with a 3rd canoe, and before him was the most treacherous river canyon in North America, Hell's Canyon. To help guide him through, Amos sided up with a moonshiner who lived on the river bank, John Mullins.
I thought, he being an old rim rocker, you know, that he would be equal to anything. He did claim that he knew every rock in the river. And I assured him that I was sure that he did, because he'd hit about all of them. The rapids were really very dangerous. Today they have put a dam in there and they've destroyed the beauty of the canyon. I went through Hell's Canyon 3 times in a canoe, and it was the first time that it had been done. And in 1925, I became the first man to make the total descent of the Columbia River from Upper Columbia Lake to the Pacific, 1,268 miles. And then I made the Mississippi, the Missouri, and the Yellowstone, and of course the Yukon finally, and the Mackenzie. And my last river voyage of importance was I became the first man to take the first rubber boat through the Grand Canyon of the Colorado, which was 1937. Those are the days that I enjoyed most, I think, when I was river running. And mostly alone, floating down the Missouri with a little hand phonograph playing Over the Waves or Wedding of the Winds, and cooking my meal on a 2-burner stove while I drifted along at 3 miles an hour.
After a series of river trips and sailing to the Orient, Amos returned to his home state of Oregon, where he worked his way through school as a newsreel cameraman while studying journalism and photography. Amos then began a career as a documentary filmmaker. One film, Conquering the Colorado, was nominated for an Academy Award in short features. He worked for the Encyclopedia Britannica and National Geographic, documenting adventures and making films about the peoples around the world.
I used to make up my own voyages for the Geographic, because theirs were always much duller than I could think of. And I got a boat, a 26-foot boat, and sailed from Patagonia on the path of Charles Darwin through the archipelagos south of the Straits of Magellan that he explored on the Adventure about 1830. That was a very thrilling trip because of the fact that I was making the first colored pictures of the 3 vanishing races, the most southerly peoples on the earth, the Ona, the Alakaloof, and the Yaghan.
During World War II, while on assignment for National Geographic, Amos survived 21 air raids in Chongqing, China. He received several awards for his Allied war effort. After the war, he returned to Alaska. He owned this boat, the Endeavor, for 45 years. In the early 1950s, he sailed her to Juneau.
One day I met the Clarence Anderson, who was then director of the Department of Fisheries, and he asked me to set up an information section. So we started it and began producing films and putting out a small magazine. And I was only going to spend 4 months. He said it'd take about 4 months. Well, it took 20 years, because I stayed until I retired in 1976. I made films like the Bristol Bay story, the Pink Salmon story, Big Game Safari. I guess a person has to create their own adventure. Although now it's just the kind that I knew is a little harder to find. I think that a person who wants to adventure becomes he has to look after his character. For instance, you have to look after your integrity. And when you're traveling, the wake is behind you, and you don't see all the garbage and wreckage of your life. But I would say that being honest and keeping your promises and returning your library book and making your life a part of the earth, or more or less all responsible for the beauty around us by the way we look at things and the way we see things. Each inspiration makes her Mars, the beauty of the stars. There is no beauty in the skies that is not made by mortal eyes.
We started a program called Safe Rides, and it's a program that if a teenager's out drinking and he doesn't want to drive, he can call us. Or if there is somebody that's riding with somebody that's drunk and doesn't want to ride home with them, they can call us. And the number is 225-RIDE.
I just like to emphasize that this really does not condone drinking, because we've gotten a lot of flack from some of the other people that are against drinking. They say that we're letting people drink and then they'll just call us if they need a ride home, or, you know, they can just call us and get a ride to another party, and that is not true. We will take them home, and that is it.
We started it because we were losing a lot of our seniors at prom and graduation. We lost Tina and McCamey, which happened last year, and then we lost 2 seniors because they were out boating with, they were drinking, and I don't know if they ever found
them. Flipped the canoe.
Yeah, they flipped it, so we lost them.
We just don't like to see teenagers die at the prime of their life, because, I mean, graduation and prom are a big thing in everybody's life. And, I mean, that just totally ruins your whole prom if one of your best friends gets killed in a drunk driving accident. It's stupid.
People are saying that a lot of the kids in that high school drank and everything. Well, if they do, that's not, you know, we're trying to save our teenagers, and they can't understand that. You know, it's hard for us to try to explain to them that we just want to save the teenagers, and we kind of want to save our friends, and it's kind of important to us. So.
Because the way I think about it is, if we save one life, this program is worth it.
Have you ever noticed how easy it is to have a strong opinion about a subject until you learn something about it? Our next chapter on the Rain Country Journal is about a dance that's provoked some strong opinions, many of them just the opposite of what the dancers themselves believe about their art. Belly dancing has had a checkered image among those who know little of the dance. However, there's no confusion in the minds of a group of Juneau women who have formed a belly dance troupe.
Expressing the joy of being a woman and the power of being a woman. The dance is a very powerful dance. This dance definitely says I'm a woman, and I'm proud of it, and I enjoy it. And being a woman is something wonderful and something powerful to be.
The Daughters of the New Moon hold periodic gatherings featuring Middle Eastern food and discussion of belly dancing.
It places some of the earliest ideas that there may have been belly dancing at about 25,000 BC. They find artifacts from that time of Venus figures, which were a worship of the female body as the giver of life.
There have been cave drawings back many, many thousands of years ago, which would also emphasize that this was not only a dance for women, but of the Mother Goddess.
Belly dancing, Middle East in origin, was introduced in the United States in the 1890s at the Chicago World's Fair by entrepreneur Saul Bloom.
The fair was a huge success because people heard that there were women there shaking their hips and doing lewd dances, and immediately Saul Bloom found he had a gold mine on his hands. After that, every hoochie coochie dancer in the country immediately jumped on the bandwagon and decided that she was going to be a belly dancer. The term belly dancer was originally coined by Saul Bloom.
What they considered revealing dress and exotic looking beauties in those days would not be considered so today. The nightclub entertainers of today are far more exotically dressed than those young ladies ever thought of being.
Getting back to the dance in this country, one of the people who brought it out of the form that it was being done in burlesque was Ruth St. Denis, one of the very most famous dancers of our country. She did a number of very well-known roles that were Middle Eastern in their flavor. Her portrayal of, I believe it was Scheherazade, and I didn't bring the books I have about Ruth St. Denis, but show her in some costumes that are very oriental, and the terrific and famous stage designs of Erte were for her performances of that show. And we sort of copied our stage set from his designs. We're not quite that good,
Well, we're working on it.
but we're growing. We're a very growing troupe.
It should never be overtly sexy. I think even most American dancers would agree to that. We, in our troupe for sure, never want any of our dancers to be really sexy looking. You may be that way and you may be very sensual, but you should always be soft. Do your movements well, of course, but never do certain movements that would be considered outright sexy.
Here in the United States, women have lots of freedom. We are liberated. We are allowed to go where we want to, when we want to, and we do what we want to, and we express ourselves how we want to. And these freedoms are so wonderful for us that we can put on a beautiful flashy costume and we can interpret this sensual music to our heart's content, and people can just watch. And if they don't like it, they can just watch anyway.
And this is new for us, though. I remember I've been dancing about 13 years, and that first year, one of my relatives said to me when she learned I was taking lessons that, I didn't know you were that kind of woman. Well, now, not only does my family support the dance, my bosses think it's wonderful, my commissioner thinks it's terrific. It's just an incredible difference from what it was.
Awareness is growing. Women's liberation is growing, and the understanding of the dance itself. Every time we perform someplace, we change an attitude. People think, gee, I didn't know that was such an art. That really is dancing, isn't it?
Thank you for joining us on our continuing exploration of the places like Elfin Cove, the people like explorer Amos Burg, and the activities like the Juneau Belly Dance Troupe that make up Rain Country. We'll be back again next week with another installment. I'm Scott Foster.